千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. As always, I want to extend my welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we are ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another.
What was the thought process that enabled the ancient Chinese to come up with ideas that are so similar to modern concepts like quantum vacuum? I'm missing the two there. Were there any precursor texts to the Tao Te Ching that would give us insights on this? So the answer to the second question, the last question, the precursor text, is that it's the Yi Jing. Yi Jing is the book. It was written roughly 3,800 years ago as compared to the 2,500 years ago of the Tao Te Ching. So it predated the Tao Te Ching by more than 2,000 years. We're talking like 2,300 years. So if you study both Yi Jing and the Tao Te Ching properly, you can definitely see how ideas like universal pattern, hidden patterns of nature, laws of physics, and void, nothingness, the state of not having anything, and yet having potentialities that can manifest as everything, void, these all evolved from the Yi Jing to the Tao Te Ching, and you can point to similarities between the two if you were to study them properly. Now, this is the reason why. This is a major reason why when people ask, well, what is the closest, what's the best translation on the Yi Jing right now? I have such a hard time answering that question because, to me, they don't even do a rudimentary job in helping you study it properly. If they did, you would be able to see the evolution of those thought patterns, thought processes, those concepts, those ideas from 4,800 years ago to the time of Lao Tzu. So I don't think anyone does that, not even remotely. So that makes it extra interesting for me to be the one to present a whole bunch of slides to you to walk you through this topic one step at a time so that you come away with an idea about how it all came to be. Was it just a massive coincidence, or was there some sort of reason behind it all? And people who ask usually will say, you know, so when are you planning on doing a Yi Jing translation? And my answer is always the same, and that is, I do definitely have that as my ultimate goal. I'm building up to that. Yi Jing is actually the ultimate. To do it properly, to do it poorly, like the way it's being done, is very easy. It's extremely easy. One can produce a horrible translation of Yi Jing, make it look good, because nobody will know anyway. No one will know the difference anyway, and produce that in a year or less. Quite easy. To do it badly is very easy. To do it right is very hard. It will take several years of concentrated study. It will take several years of research, and probably, if you guys are interested, what we can do is that we can go through the 64 hexagrams one at a time in a similar way that we're going through the Tao Te Ching chapters one at a time, so that in several years' time, we will have a pretty complete picture of what the original Yi Jing was trying to say. But that's in the future. Let's stick to the topic at hand. First, the book, The Tao of Physics, often comes up as an answer to this question. So I want to dive into that in just a moment and use it as a launching point. It's The Tao of Physics. Let's go to the next slide. The Tao of Physics, written by Dr. Fritjof Capra, who is a physicist working in high energy physics in Berkeley, an actual scientist, a well-respected, well-published, well-regarded scientist. He wrote this book, and one of the remarkable things about it is that it's gone through many printings now, gone through many editions, and the science that he first jotted down some 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I think, I forget, decades ago, that science is still holding up very well today. And that's because Dr. Capra had a very strong, solid, fundamental understanding of physics. So what he was talking about is not new age, quote unquote, woo, which is just the pretentious understanding of quantum mechanics and using it to try to advance your argument. So one of the ways that quantum mechanics is misused is when people want to express the idea that your thoughts will manifest as reality, so that you just have to think about receiving a wonderful gift, maybe I don't know, like a new laptop or something, and it's going to affect reality and it will manifest in your life. So people who want to convince you of that will sometimes bring out quantum mechanics, and then they will list out some examples to talk about how consciousness is what creates reality. So that's actually a misrepresentation of quantum mechanics and the concepts behind that, and hopefully you will have a clearer understanding of how that misuse occurs as we get to the end of this discussion. Another way that quantum mechanics can often be misused is when people equate quantum mechanics or quantum physics in general with the workings of the mind. So the idea is that, well, quantum mechanics is frankly mystifying. Quantum physics, difficult to understand. We know how to work with it, but we don't really get it. It seems crazy. It seems like it's absolutely crazy. So on the other hand, we also do not understand consciousness. We don't understand the mind. So if we don't understand quantum mechanics and we don't understand the mind, maybe they're the same thing. That's why we don't understand them both. Well, that's a very big leap to go from not understanding both to that they are one and the same or somehow connected together. So in reality, brain cells, neurons, do not operate at anywhere near the quantum level. You'd have to go a lot smaller to get to the quantum level of existence. So anyhow, let's set those aside for now. Let's go over this particular slide. So quite a few students of the Tao. Here I am talking about you. I'm talking about modern Western students of the Tao. If you bring these ideas to Asia, to China, you may not get a very very receptive audience. People may not really have any idea what you're talking about. It's only in the West, it's only with books like the Tao of Physics, which are widely praised, maybe not completely understood, that it's only in the West that these ideas are coming together in a very beautiful way. So students of the Tao have noticed the remarkable similarities between ancient concepts and modern thought, particularly in physics. So one thing to point out, it's not just the ancient Chinese. Aspects of ancient Hindu thoughts can also seem quite similar to modern physics. If you were to read the book, The Tao of Physics, you will see numerous references to that. The Hindu concepts of Brahma, Hindu concepts, karma, so many things that it talks about have to do with the ideas that originated in India as opposed to China. Now, of course, the Tao-related thoughts, definitely a big part of the book, and that's why in later editions of the Tao of Physics, other than the title, the Tao, that's completely Chinese. The Tao is not Hindu at all. It's not Buddhism at all. It's completely Chinese. Buddhism is actually, as you probably already know, it originated from India. It is also not Chinese. So in the different editions of the Tao of Physics, you can see the one on the left has a Hindu symbology there. And then the 25th anniversary edition on the right has the Chinese yin and yang symbol there. Now, even the cover on the right, if you look a little bit deeper into the depiction of the yin and yang symbol itself, you will see an image of the Buddha here. So basically, this book is talking about ancient Eastern thought, which include both ancient Hindu thoughts and also the ancient Chinese. Just to get that out of the way. So what are some of these thoughts where we have similarity, and how do they come into being? In today's discussion, I will focus on what I know best, which is the Tao itself. And that may be the reason why you are tuning in, is to hear something about that. So let's explore the parallels. The book is pretty thick, and also it's pretty dense, although I would say that it's written in a way that someone who's not a trained physicist, who is just interested in science, I think most readers can find it quite easy to understand. So the book is quite dense, it's full of ideas. I've extracted some of the big ideas from the book to share with you. Let's go through them. Number one is about the unity and interrelation of all things and events. Everything is interdependent and inseparable. When I say interdependent, that's actually not just dependency from one to the other, but interdependent as in mutually relying on one another. Everything is part of that totality, the whole. So bottom line, all are one. So item one is about the one, or the unity. Point number one. Point number two is about the two, or the duality. Duality is the essence of existence. Anywhere we look, we find evidence of complementary duality. In physics, you have action-reaction, you have matter antimatter, wave-particle paradox. There are so many examples of yin and yang in physics that another physicist, a titan in the field of physics, Niels Bohr, when he got sufficiently interested in the Tao and looked into ancient Chinese thought, he decided to make the yin and yang symbol his family crest. That is the coat of arms. He made a willful decision that for Dr. Bohr, he did not want the ancient medieval depictions of prancing horse, fierce fighting animals, etc., or shield and weapons as the family coat of arms. Instead, he wanted to modernize it, bring it into the contemporary world, and using something that was meaningful for him, which was the yin and yang symbol. Number three, the nature of reality is dynamic, characterized by constant fluctuation, movement, change. So when you see change there, I hope that you will instantly link it to mind the book of change, Yi Jing. That's one of the big topics we'll be talking about today. So finally, let's look at the world. So A previous paradigm in science is to look at the world in terms of objects, objects that you sort and categorize, that you put into neat, well-defined categories. So taxonomy is one example. So you'll have biology, you have chemistry, working using that kind of older paradigm. The new paradigm is not oriented toward objects and categories. The new paradigm, especially in physics, is in terms of ongoing processes, processes that are happening all the time. So if you look at number 4, I would urge you to think of it as the quote, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey paradigm, unquote. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So these are some of the ideas from the book. And there's a lot more to talk about. I think I have probably like a dozen slides all devoted to these topics. And we're about to get into them. So initially, it may seem like it doesn't have a whole lot to do with modern physics. All I would ask is that you bear with me and that it will become clear probably 3 or 4 slides down the road. Okay. As you know, whenever I have Q&A, I usually give a short answer and then I give a long answer. So we're about to launch into a very long answer. So central idea in the Tao, this is the starting point. There's way more beyond this. Central idea in the Tao that began 5,000 years ago, probably even before that, but 5,000 years ago, the idea was that one can understand nature. Indeed, not just nature, but also the world, reality, existence, the universe, etc. One can understand it all by being the detached observer, by watching what's going on. Watching what's going on from a detached frame of mind, which means that you don't go into it with preconceptions. You don't go into it thinking that you already know the answer and you're looking for ways to prove yourself correct. To be detached is to allow whatever happens to happen so that you can learn from that. So in Chinese, the character is guan, to observe. Guan, Pinyin Yi Jing, guan. Think of this, when we're talking about parallels with modern physics, think of guan, the detached observer, as the equivalent to the modern idea of the scientific observation. So now we get to the second emperor of the mythical 3 emperors of ancient Chinese, Fuxi. So pinyin looks like this, F-U-X-I. Now remember, when you see X, it's supposed to be SH. So Fuxi. So this is the name of a legendary emperor, likely a historical figure, although perhaps not the person with all the achievements attributed to him. As it is with everything else from ancient history, anything that is lost in the midst of time tended to get clumped together. So all the inventions of a particular dynasty get the emperor of that dynasty gets to take credit for all those, when in fact it might have come from other people. The reverse is also possible, that he really was the brilliant mind behind many of the inventions that was attributed to him. So let's talk about this person. This person became known for his ability to 听八风之气. And I'll explain that in Chinese in just a moment. He's known for many, many things. Like, for instance, he invented nets with which to capture animals. He invented the institution of marriage so people can form families. So many things were attributed to him. set those aside for just now. Let's focus on this right here. And this picture, this depiction of Fuxi, this ancient emperor, will become more meaningful as we explore this topic some more. So look at the Chinese for just a moment. Qing, first character there, that means listen. Ba, second character, means 8. Feng, third character, means wind. So far you've got listen, 8, winds. Zi is the apostrophe S. Qi is the CHI, qi. It could mean just energy or breath. Qing ba feng zi qi. So put everything together, and you get, he had the ability to listen to the breath of the 8 winds. I'll talk more about that and also what it means. But let's talk about the time that he lived. Remember, we're talking about the very beginning of how the thought process behind the Tao came into being. That's why we need to get into such details about this particular pivotal figure. If you take a look at the picture, you'll notice that he's wearing furs. He's wearing animal furs. So he's got this fur coat, and he's got more fur from a different animal. So he's wearing furs instead of clothes. Depictions of other emperors later on would always have the historical figures wearing robes, from textiles, from silk robes, etc. But this is different. This is all just basically pretty primitive animal products. And also, if you can look at his lack of footwear, no shoes, not even sandals. So this is all recognizing that back in those days, 4,800 years ago, 5,000 years ago, everything was primitive. Prior to the time of this particular legendary emperor, probably just a tribal leader at the time. There wasn't really anything like an empire back in those days. So before his time, it was a definite hunter-gatherer culture and a way of life. A group of people, a tribe, would move to a region in wilderness and take the resources from there, gathering the fruits, hunting the animals until they exhaust the resources in that particular region. And when they have nothing more to be gained from that part, from that neck of the woods, they move on to another place where they repeat the whole process again. So hunting and gathering were both essential to the survival of the people back in those days. That's actually pretty important. Now, I mentioned the importance of observation. So Fuxi was a tribal leader who was able to observe the world and begin to intuitively grasp that there are certain patterns going on. That if you see certain signs up in the heavens, that would suggest a kind of weather, a particular kind of weather that's about to come. Now, he kept at this. He created a system of symbols to keep track of things for himself. And he became pretty good at it. He became so good at it that parties that are about to depart the tribe to go on a hunting excursion will come to him first and say, what do you foresee in the next few days? What do you foresee for next week? And this is because oftentimes the hunters are out there for days at a time. They need to plan their hunting trips with the weather in mind in order to maximize their chances, to optimize what they can bring back to the tribe. So they discovered definite advantages because they realized that Fuxi was always very accurate. He figured it out. He wasn't always able to explain how he knew, but he always knew what kind of weather was coming. Now, different groups of hunters, including the ones in nearby tribes, kept coming to him, asking for advice, So he got pretty tired of it. So he began to write on a tree, on a nearby tree. He would make markings about the weather that was coming up. So this was actually, the first weather station, right, in the ancient world. So let me challenge everyone a little bit. As I said, 听八风之气, this phrase in Chinese about what he was good at is listening to the breath of the 8 winds, observing the changing patterns of weather. So in one of my books, I talked about the 8 winds, but that was from a much, much later time, thousands of years later. And at that time, the 8 winds were used as a metaphor for the 8 forces among human beings, like greed, like, anger, things of that nature. Those are the things that can blow you off course. But that's about human beings. But back in his days, the 8 winds were not talking about that at all. It was just the wind. It was just the winds that were blowing. And so to listen to the breath of the 8 winds is equivalent to observing the changing patterns of weather. Here, I want to challenge everyone by asking you, well, why 8? And I think you have heard enough to know that, to begin to have an inkling why the number chosen was 8 and not some other number like 4 or 5 or 6 or 1 or 2 or 3. It's no other number but 8. Why is that? Any ideas? I'll give you a moment. So why did the ancient Chinese say that he listened to the breath of the 8 winds? Okay. All right. Interesting. So your intuition is correct. The 8 winds is equivalent to the 8 directions. Now remember, his goal at the time was to dispense useful advice to the hunters. So the hunters at the time had already worked out, maybe not a map just yet, but they definitely know the distinction between north, south, east, and west. So the 4 cardinal directions of the compass, plus the northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. So those are the 8 directions. That's how they categorize the winds that are blowing. That the wind is coming from the north, from the south, east or west, or from one of the other directions. Maybe the wind is blowing from the southwest or something like that. But it's 8. So 8 directions, and the reason is because the directions are meaningful in terms of instructions or warning for the hunters, i.e. toward maybe one day, a group of hunters comes and Fuxi says, well, toward the south, there's going to be rain. So it will be better if your hunting party is ready to hunt, it will be better for you to go in the other direction, go toward the north. So that number 8 became significant. Later on, it would become part of the overall concept behind Yi Jing. So notice the Ba Gua, the 8 trigrams, and the turtle. So in the picture, the Ba Gua is in the lower left-hand corner, right here. The turtle is in the lower right-hand corner. And you will see Fuxi looking down at the turtle. So these 2 things don't just appear here by accident. They're there for a reason. And I believe that in just a few slides, you will know exactly what that reason is and how it can eventually be linked to physics. So here, I want you to note, so I'm bringing your attention to him, to Fuxi watching the turtle. So that is a depiction of detached observation. So he is curious, he is fascinated, he's observing, he's learning, he's not passive. So when you observe nature from that particular mindset, you're not passive, you are forming ideas. You are trying to figure out how things really are so that you can know what's going on now, you can figure out why things are happening the way they are, and you can learn to anticipate or predict what's going to happen in the future. So Fuxi, this ancient tribal leader, became so good at this that his fame spread, and the more he predicted with greater accuracy, the more he had this understanding, not just of the weather, but of the hidden patterns of nature. That when he looked at the weather, he could see that, well, we don't really know what's causing what, but there are certain things, certain connections that we can begin to uncover. So, for example, a thunderstorm. So think about how that occurs and how thunder and lightning will accompany rain when a thunderstorm is upon us. So that's one example of how they can be connected. And sometimes just before it actually rains, you can sense the difference, that the air pressure, a feeling, there's ozone, it's electric, you sense something is about to happen, and then shortly after it begins to rain. So there's all sensory inputs, there's all intuitions and feelings, gut feelings that you can begin to develop when you look at these patterns. So the turtle that he's looking at, it symbolized this realization. And this realization is about the hidden patterns of nature. So what he told other people was that he saw symbols on the back of the turtle. And this is the symbol became known as Luo Shu. So that's what I'm about to explain next. Now, and I want to also explain that when you study history, sometimes you have to understand that legends came up, legends were developed to explain certain things that would otherwise be too difficult to explain. Example, Fuxi might have intuitively understood some hidden principles that he was able to then codify into his work, Yi Jing, but it would be rather difficult for him to explain it to other people. He would need to explain his thought process, and this is primitive times we're talking about, so other people may not really understand what he's getting at. They're survival-oriented. They just want to know the end result. So rather than to explain how he derived his insight, he decided to tell a different story in symbolic terms. He said that, in the river Luo, in this particular river, a turtle climbed out of it, and he saw carving on the back of the turtle, and that gave him one of the sacred keys of the universe. And when people hear this, they will be like, oh, okay, so you saw that. They did not think that that was unusual. But if he actually tried to explain, what you see, if you add these up together, you get this result. And if you line it up this way, you get this particular result. So isn't that incredible? Isn't that interesting? He will lose a lot of people. So what am I talking about? Luo Shu, let's zoom into that. What does that mean? Luo Shu, Pinyin, as you can see here, Luo Shu, and Luo is the name of a river. Shu usually means books. Here it means markings. Markings from the river. And from the river, in this case, that's just a metaphorical language, meaning it's from nature. This is something that's built into reality. So this is the marking that we're talking about here. So, and what is it? Well, this is kind of hard to figure out. So let me give you the key to decrypt Luo Shu. Now remember, this is the underlying, this is the ultimate key that where everything else was derived. including later on the Tao Te Ching, and I'll show you how that evolution took place. Remember that this is so incredibly ancient, so incredibly primitive, that writing did not exist. And they did not have a system, a formalized system of written records. So language consisted of what people say to one another. So if you were in a situation like that, wearing furs yourself and having no shoes, and you wanted to create a system for tracking numbers, what would you do? Well, you would probably do it in the easiest way possible. You would depict 1 with a dot. That's here. And what about 2? What if you have 2 dots? You probably want to connect them together to depict that you are talking about the totality of 2 dots together. That's 2. 3, same way, 3 dots. 4, okay, well now you have some options. You can string them together like this. That's 4. And what about 5? Well, 5 might be like this. And so on. So here you will see 6, right? Here you're going to see 8. So if you look at this right here, that's 9. So there's not a whole lot of great designs that you can do for that. So it could just be one long string. Here we have 7. So there's no easy geometric shape that you can create for that. So you can just make it a long string. So the key to decrypt Luoshu is to realize that they're numbers. So what will happen if we substitute numbers for all of these? Here's what they would look like. And this is the insight that Fuxi figured out. And, might not have been him, might be someone from his tribe that he ended up taking credit for, but either way, it's there. We convert all the dots to numbers. We get this. Okay? So if you look at these numbers, how are these numbers remarkable? Does anyone look at these numbers and see what's special about the way that they are arranged? I'll pause for a moment. Excellent. So in math, this is known as the magic square. And this is the primal magic square, where if you take any 3 numbers from any vertical, any horizontal, or any of the 2 diagonals, the 2 diagonals in this case will be from 4 down to 6, that's one diagonal. The other one will be 2 to 8 or 8 to 2. All of those combinations will add up to 15. And all it is just an arrangement of the numbers in a square, in a 3x3 arrangement. So magic square. So when Fuxi saw this, what he was thinking was that, well, this is neat. This is unexpected, and yet this is the way it works. It's so incredibly simple and elegant, and yet it is also kind of surprising that it will work out so neatly like this. So take a moment and try adding up these numbers yourself. You'll see that they all add up to 15. One way to look at it more simply is to isolate the middle, the 5, and then realize that no matter which pairs you look at, all the pairs add up to 10. So like 4 and 6 is 10, 3 and 7 is 10, 1 and 9 is 10, 2 and 8 is 10. Therefore, no matter which direction you go, it's going to be 15. The more surprising fact, perhaps, is that if you were to take the horizontal this way, 816, that's 15. 294, that's 15 again. 276, the same. 438, the same. So that's kind of cool. And this gave Fuxi the idea that there's got to be these hidden laws of nature that we cannot perceive immediately, but they're there nevertheless. So let's go to that slide. And I can see that we may not be able to finish this discussion, but hey, I think it's interesting. So the turtle became a very colorful legend. That was a way to express the following. That number one, there are certain laws governing nature that are not obvious at first glance. You know, it's not like we just put together any random collection of numbers and it forms a magic square. We have to be very deliberate and figure out that there's an arrangement where they all add up to 15 no matter which way you go. Number two, the patterns that we observe, you know, things we can see, the clouds in the sky, the rain that falls down, sunshine, etc. The patterns that we observe are the results of these natural laws that are not readily perceptible. So gravity causes things to fall. We can see the falling objects, but we cannot necessarily see gravity at work. So these patterns are the way or the Tao of things, and it's reflected in heaven, earth meaning the biosphere, meaning flora and fauna, the animals, the plants, insects, and also all the living things. What I talked about, the flowers, the plants, the animals, human beings, including us humans. So including our interactions with one another in society, these hidden laws are operating. We don't know what all of them are, and we may have only uncovered just a small part of them, but they're there. So this is the beginning of this realization that it's sort of like the potential for scientific thinking, but they did not know what science was at the time. So when you look at the magic square, how simple that is, the elegant simplicity and the unexpected results, it suggests that the complex everything that we see, the complexities that we see all around us, they probably started out a lot simpler. So when you want to explore this idea of simplicity, the simplest of all is having nothing at all. So today we would say that's zero. Back in those days, it would just be nothingness or the state of not having anything, followed by one. And one could be oneness or unity, the one. And that's followed by two. Again, we're sticking to the simplest possible, and that's complementary pair, followed by three. And that's the third factor, which is change or the passage of time. So it's beginning to come together now. This is a very detailed evolution of the thought process. So think about the yin and yang symbol. It includes everything that we have talked about. The concept of oneness, well, the symbol itself, it's one symbol, it's one thing. The symbol itself contains two halves, yin and yang, so that's the concept of two. The curve between the yin and yang halves depicts motion, movement. It's a way to suggest that the two halves are constantly intruding into one another, that it's rotating about its center. So the interactions of yin and yang, male and female energies, that is what creates all the complexities in life. And when we talk about complexities, we will begin by using trigrams to express the above, to express complex life patterns. So this is about to get into the I Ching itself, which has 64 hexagrams.
Good job, Kappa is not the only one to notice the parallels. Niels Bohr, as you can see, passed away quite some time ago. He was a young man around the turn of the century. He was he was in his mid-20s, 27, when the news reached him that the Titanic sank in the North Atlantic. So that gives you sort of a sense for his time. So he was famed for his contributions, numerous contributions that increased understanding to the atomic structure. So structure of the atom prior to him was a mystery, and through his work, verification of experiments, etc., it was much better understood. And I'll explain in a moment. And he also made numerous contributions to quantum mechanics. He also was one of the first to understand the connection between the two. So the term quantum, I find today, has been vastly misused and overused. So, the quantum healing, quantum learning, quantum this, quantum that. Most people who are using the word quantum don't really know where it came from. So, back in Niels Bohr's time, when they were just starting to get into understanding the quantum realm, one of the key insights was about quanta. A quanta is a discrete amount of energy that is required to have an electron move to a different orbit. So when the electron when you measure the distance from the electron to the nucleus, there are only certain distances that it can be. It's not continuous. There are steps. There are discrete steps, and it requires a certain amount of energy for it to shift up or down in those orbits. Quanta, the discrete energy, later on, it shows up in so many aspects of physics, and that's how we ended up with quantum mechanics. So it all came from the term quanta. Now, let me describe Niels Bohr, that he sensed the principle of complementarity. The principle of complementarity says that things could have properties that appear to be mutually exclusive, and yet they are all existent in the thing. It just depends on the experiment that you set up to reveal one or the other. And the most famous example is dual slit experiment. It's one way to see in the macroscopic world how things work in the quantum world. So when you have light shining through a single slit as you cut in the cardboard, what appears on the other side shows that the light that you shine on slits is behaving like particles, like many little particles. Now, the moment you have another slit in the mix, you get a bending effect behind it, and that's a wave-like particle. Now, you can then obscure one or the other slit, and it goes right back to the other particle. It is as if somehow the light knows whether you are letting it shine through one slit or two. But that's crazy. So another way to think about it is that if there's only one slit, so you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that light is only going through that one slit, then it behaves like a particle. The moment there are two slits and light has the potential of going through either one or the other, it becomes a wave and it goes through both to interfere with itself. But how does the light know that? And how does the light care? How do photons care if you know which slits you will go through or if you don't? This is at the heart of quantum mechanics. And like people say that quantum mechanics, just if you really understand it, you would realize that you understand none of it, because it is so incredibly crazy that it makes no sense at all. It's not intuitive to feel. At the same time, back in Niels Bohr, he notices the particle wave duality of light, like photons and indeed electrons, and so many experiments will show that he was taken by this duality, complementary duality, and he made it the centerpiece of his life and his philosophy. He won the Nobel Prize in 1922. He was knighted in 1947. And by the way, he's Danish, so this is not this is not the British knighting. This is the Danish. And usually the knighthood for the Danish is only restricted to heads of state or for royalty. So he was knighted because of his phenomenal contribution to modern business. And when he then, had to present his coat of arms for his family because of his knighthood, he designed his own. The picture that you see at the right-hand side, you'll see the yin and yang there. There's also an inscription in the coat of arms that is not so easy to read, but I've typed it out for you. It's contraria sunt complementa in Latin, and it just means that opposites are complementary. So that's the motto for his home, for his family, and that it appears in his coat of arms. So you can tell that this scientist was completely into the Tao. Now, there's a little bit more that I'll talk about in regards to him that'll kind of drive home the point, but I'll park the presentation on this slide as we take our 5-minute break. All right, time to pick it up again. So, looking at the graphic here, I realized that it's not really clear. It's not super clear what it shows. So, I did search for a better version of the coat of arms to show you, and that's in the next slide. With this, you can see the design. The Danish Knight Order of the Elephants, so that's hence the elephants the ship bottom. The yin and yang symbol very prominent there, and the family model contraria sunt oppositum. So this is what Dr. Moore designed for himself, because for him it was the most meaningful symbol that he could have used. He found that all the stuff that he got into with physics, the unity, the interrelatedness of everything, the complementary duality, the wave particle duality, the change processes, etc. He felt that none of these things were adequately addressed in Western traditions, but were actually the focus of Eastern traditions, such as what we're studying today. So, in the University of Copenhagen, there's a statue of Niels Bohr. And in that statue, not sure if you can see it, prominently in the center is, once again, the yin and yang symbol. So, he wanted this to represent him and his understanding of this. So, now let's start with the ancient Chinese come upon these concepts that causes modern physics, modern physicists, especially great minds like Niels Bohr, to totally identify with it and see the connection with it. Well, last time we went through the beginning parts of that thinking process. Let me give everyone a recap to get us all caught up on that. So in this one slide, this encapsulates about, 10 slides, half a dozen to 10 slides for last time. So take these step by step. First one, that's the character for observation, specifically being the detached observer. That's number one. It all starts with that. So today, we will talk about scientific observation. So back in those days, in ancient China, it was one, to be detached as you observe the marvels of nature. Second, I talked about Wu Xi. This is an ancient ruler. He was most likely a leader in the ancient tribe. Back in primitive days, it was the transition period between hunter-gatherers and agricultural society. So he practiced being the detached observer. Specifically, he looked up at the sky, he looked at the clouds, the winds, the weather patterns, the rain, etc., and he gained insights by observing and by developing intuition to perceive the patterns. And he was then able to use that understanding, that insight, and that intuitive grasp to make predictions. It became very accurate, and this became very important for the hunter-gatherers who would oftentimes venture away from the tribe for days at a time, maybe even weeks at a time, and therefore would benefit from some sort of weather forecast. So many groups of hunters came to him to ask about what the weather is going to be like, for days down the road, that he ended up making carvings on the tree so people can just go to that tree to look at his weather predictions in a similar way that you and I will go to weather.com today, AccuWeather or whatnot, to see what the weather is going to be for the next few days. So having had that degree of success, he was, number one, elevated into a leadership position in that tribe. And number two, he was turning his mind toward how to perceive that same pattern in reality itself, in existence itself, not just the weather, not just the sky, not just heaven, but also human beings. So he looked around, he asked himself some questions, and he observed animals, he observed plants, he observed human beings. He looked at how human natures interacted with one another. He would draw connections between what he sees in nature with what he sees in human beings, and later on I'll show you guys exactly what those are. You can see it in the Papua symbol. So one of his insights had to do with mathematics. And this was at when it would have been very difficult to explain mathematics to others. So he ended up just making up a legend saying that he saw markings on the back of a turtle that crawled out of a river, the War River. And those numbers have divine significance. And those numbers, as I showed you before, were simply the magic square. And that, no matter which row, which column, which diagonal you take, the numbers add up to 15. So he marveled at this, and then he got to thinking that, this is definitely not obvious that you can put numbers together as to get this kind of interesting result. So extending from that, there's got to be other unknown, unseen laws in nature that we cannot really know them right off the top of our heads, but we can figure it out by observing what we can see. Furthermore, that this kind of pattern, this kind of underlying order to all things must be what eventually gives us the complexities that we can observe in life. So he chose to depict the complexity of life using the Papua. As we go a little bit further, you're going to see some elementary things repeated over and over again. Zero, the nothingness. And that's used quite a bit. And then one, so from nothingness to somethingness. So one is used quite a bit, and then two, the duality, and then three, the Ching. And that's it. Everything else can be derived from 0, 1, 2, and 3. So, for instance, Papua, the 8 trigrams, well, 8, that's basically 2 taken to the 3rd power. So that's 2 and 3. Now, when you really understand the thought process that you went through, you will suddenly find that this Chinese painting here, this becomes extremely meaningful. First of all, what's he doing? He's not looking at the painter. He's actually looking down at a turtle. So this embodies, well, first of all, the identity, Fuxi, the tribal leader, the so-called legendary emperor. He's observing an aspect of nature in the turtle here. The turtle is what he claims to have the pattern, the magic pattern that we know as a magic square. So that's the reason why he's looking at turtle. And deriving from that series of insights will eventually give him the bakwa, which you can see at the lower left-hand side. So in this one painting, you've got observation, you've got bushi, you've got observation, you've got Shu, you've got number of the turtle, you've got bakwa. So you didn't actually plan it that way, but what we talked about last time is all encapsulated in this one painting. So if you don't really know what I'm talking about when I refer to Shu, the magic square, I'll just show you what it looks like. Another quick look at it. These are the markings that claim was on the back of the turtle from the river, from nature. Actually, just numbers. So the number of dots that you see is represented. So one dot is the number 1, 5 dots is the number 5, 2 dots is the number 2, etc. So it can be translated like this to the numerals, into the numbers that we know and work with. So this is the scheme where everything adds up to 15, no matter which way you go. Whether it's vertical, horizontal, or diagonal. Absolutely every 3 numbers in a straight line adds up to 15. So let's move on. That's what we got to that last time. Here I want to highlight some key words. So looking at the magic square, how unexpectedly fascinating it is, how elegant in its simplicity. So in contemplating complexity or rising out of simplicity, you will go from the ultimate simplicity, which is 0 or nothingness, followed by 1, followed by 2, and followed by 3. 1 is oneness, 2 is complementary dualities, and 3 is change, factor of time. So that is just a quick reminder. Now we can go a little bit further. We got to hear last one as well. Thinking about how the yin and yang symbol, you can visualize the yin and yang symbol. It's actually got the symbol itself as one thing, but the one thing contains 2 halves. That's the number 2. And then there is a curve between the 2 halves, which is an indicator of movement or motion, interactions between 2. So that's 3. That's the dynamics. Now, the movements, the interaction of the complementary pairs, yin and yang, male and female energies, that is what creates all complexities of life. And you see that biologically in terms of childbirth. So we then use the trigrams to express the complex patterns of life. So trigrams surround the yin and yang symbol, and the trigrams literally are composed of 3 sticks. Each one of the sticks can be broken, which is yin, or non-continuous, or unbroken, which is yang. So when you have 3 sticks and each one has 2 possibilities, you end up with 8 total possibilities. 2 to the third power. So let me explain. And so there's actually subtleties to the Ba Gua. Ba means 8. Gua means trigram. So Ba Gua literally means 8 trigrams. So take a look. Surrounding the yin and yang symbol, what is at the very top are 3 continuous lines, 3 unbroken lines. So that represents heaven, and it represents yang. Yang energy, the male. So down below, 2 lines, that's the opposite. So that represents yin. That represents ground or the earth. So in the language of I Ching, this male aspect, the heavenly aspect, is Qian. So remember, Pinyin is a little bit funky, so Qian is actually Chin. You would pronounce it as if it was spelled Chin. Qian. And then down below, Kun. So at a temple like this one, if you listen to people talk in Chinese, you will hear them say Qian Kun. That is yin and yang. So to be more specific, Qian is yang, Kun is yin. Now, when they talk about yin and yang, they will just say it in Chinese, yin yang. So there's no and, it's just yin yang. Now there's more. So what about the other ones? Well, let's take a look at the horizontal pair. So you've got the broken, straight, broken. So you already know without looking at the other side that it should be continuous, broken, continuous, because it's supposed to be the opposite right across. So they have different kinds of symbology as well. So on the left hand side, this represents fire. On the right hand side, it represents water. So there's your north, south, east, and west. And then the other 2 pairs, you've got mountain versus swamp. Notice that mountain is next to ground. And then you also have wind with opposite to thunder. Thunder causes the ground to shake. Lightning strikes the ground. Wind is something that is up in the sky. Movements of air. So even just the Ba Gua, even just the symbol itself is deeply meaningful. And then, so what Wuxi discovered is that with only 8 trigrams, that was not quite enough to describe all the patterns that he could distinguish in life. However, if he did a 8 by 8, 8 times 8, or 8 to the power of 2, he will get to 64. And 64 hexagrams, that is the gua that has 6 lines, each of which can be broken. 64 hexagrams, 64 patterns, that describes life very well. In his own words, here's what Wuxi said. Wuxi said 有极是太极，太极生2义，即阴阳，阳意是生四象，即少阴、太阴、少阳、太阳。四象有8卦，8864卦。Okay, so these words in Chinese basically depict 0 to 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 64. And this evolves into the thoughts expressed in the Tao Te Ching. And this is what leads to the interesting parallels with modern physics. So you are probably curious about these words from Wuxi, this legendary emperor. I will translate them for you in a moment. First, it's important to note concepts. So 0 comes 1. From nothing comes something. Something from nothing. So think about how that is a very good match for ideas like virtual particles. So at the quantum level, basically particles are popping in and out of existence all the time. So there's no set thing at the quantum level. It's seething with change at all times. It doesn't have the stability that we observe in the macroscopic world. At the quantum level, you see existence is not something that's guaranteed. Something's going to be here one moment, it's going to be gone the next. And then I spoke of the wave particle duality, a very good match for the yin and yang symbol in double slit experiments. Is something that you can look up. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And yet, it's something that can be done in a very simple way. Okay, now, let me not delay any further and provide you with a test. So let's take a look. I've divided it up into 4 lines. What does Wu Qi say, actually? First, he says the unlimited produces the delimited. The delimited is the ultimate extent. So let me explain. This is the something from nothing part. So the unlimited is the infinite. It is also the realm. It's the field of infinite potentialities. That appears to be a void. It's the void that Bruce Lee called the pregnant void. It seems to contain nothing, and yet it contains the potential for all things. So from that unlimited, infinite state is created, the delimited, the somethingness, the finite. Now, the finite is what our world is. Our world is about things that are not infinite. So there's absolutely nothing that we possess that is infinite in nature. Our lives are not infinite. People's capabilities are not infinite. So the entire existence is what is meant by the ultimate extent, that somethingness expanded, the finite expanded, encompasses all of existence. So in Chinese, unlimited is Wu Qi, and then You Qi is the delimited, and then Tai Qi is the ultimate extent. So Wu Qi and Tai Qi are the 2 phrases most often used in an authentic tradition of Buddha. So Tai Qi, the ultimate extent, produces 2 aspects, the yin and yang. So you will see the characters here, yin, yang. Now, yin and yang will in turn, multiply by itself to produce form. That is, you can have big, small, larger, stronger, weaker, taller, shorter, etc. So when you cross-reference 2 pairs, you get 4 possibilities. So the 2 aspects, the yin and yang, produce the 4 phenomena. And by the way, the easiest way to think of 4 phenomena are the seasons. So lesser yin, greater yin, those will be spring and summer, respectively. Pardon me, got a bad thing. Lesser yin, greater yin will be the autumn and winter, respectively. And then lesser yang and greater yang will be spring and summer, respectively. So, autumn, winter, spring, summer. 4 possibilities. Then, the 4 phenomena act on the 8 trigrams. 8 times 8 results in 64 hexagrams. So hexagrams ultimately are the patterns that can be distinguished in reality. So sometimes people ask, Derek, why is it so accurate when I do a casting in I Ching? The answers I get back, it's almost kind of scary how accurate that is. And my answer is always, well, I don't know why it is so accurate. If I had to speculate, I would speculate that perhaps it is because the ancients really had something when they wanted to describe the patterns that exist in reality. So the I Ching is something that's patterned after reality itself. Okay, so is there more? Yes, there is. I want to trace the evolution of the thoughts all the way to the Tao Te Ching. Remember, that was the question. Here's the answer. So, looking at the translation will help you make sense of what is in Tao Te Ching chapter 42. Line 1, Tao produces 1, or Tao is the state of nothingness that contains the potentiality for everything. So, Tao is infinite, limited. It produces the P-limited, that's the 1, and the P-limited is the ultimate, extends, that's the universe. Universe, remember, you and I, that's 1. Verse is song. Universe literally is 1 song. Second line, ultimate extent produces 2 aspects, the yin and yang. Well, in chapter 42, the next line says 1 produces 2. By now, you can see what Lao Tzu was trying to accomplish with the Tao Te Ching. So Lao Tzu knows the thinking from about 2,300 years before his time, and he decided to distill it into the simplest possible expression. So he gets Tao produces 1, 1 produces 2. What he means is that ultimate extent produces 2 aspects, the yin and the yang. Next, the 2 aspects produce the 4 phenomena, autumn, winter, spring, summer. 2 produces 3. Here, 3 means change, as in the change of seasons. The change of 4 seasons. Then trigrams, ending up with 64 hexagrams, that's encapsulated in the next line, 3 produce myriad things. That is, the change or the interaction of yin and yang produces everything. Living creatures, living things, the world in which we live, absolutely everything. So, let's finish the round trip. Let's finish the trip and map 42 to physics. Chapter 42, physics, Tao produces 1, something from nothing, like the transient fluctuation of the virtual particles and the related nature of all things. Oneness, unity. Line 2 of chapter 42, 1 produces 2. In physics, duality is the essence of existence. Action, reaction, matter, anti-matter, the wave-particle paradox. Line 3, 2 produces 3. The nature of reality is dynamic, primarily characterized by constant fluctuation, movement, change. Line 4, 3 produce myriad things. We look at the world and observe myriad ongoing processes. All of it results from the above. There you go. You have, in the last 6 or 7 slides, you've got a continuous evolution from the ancient primitive times of the Tao to the time of Lao Tzu, 2,500 years ago, to today with modern physics, quantum mechanics, etc. That is how it took place.
So, last time, I want to remind everyone that we spoke of the synchronistic similarities between modern physics and the ancient Tao. At the very end, I presented to you this slide. And remember, there was a whole bunch of other slides right before this, starting from the I Ching from 4,800 years ago to the Tao Te Ching 2,500 years ago, the evolution of that, how it evolved, morphed from one to the other, and then the similarities, the match between the Tao and modern physics, as you can see here. So that connection between the Tao and physics is quite real. Hence, the book, The Tao of Physics, by a noted physicist, a practicing scientist of great renown, very well respected, and as I mentioned last time, one of the greatest physicists of all time adopted the yin and yang symbol as his family's coat of arms when he was knighted. So that connection definitely very real. However, because of the Tao of physics, one thing that I want to say about that I didn't get to talk about last time is that this the ideas from modern research of physics can oftentimes be misused. And I want to make sure everyone is watching for that and is sensitive to the possibility that some people who claim to be teachers, spiritual teachers, may actually utilize some of these terms from science in a way that seems to bolster whatever it is they want to talk about, and yet to those that really know science, it only reveals the depth of their ignorance. So without naming any names, let me show you a couple of examples. One from a male guru, and the other one from female. So the Tao physics connection can often be misused by phony gurus. So example one particular teacher says, in the absence of a conscious entity, the moon remains a radically ambiguous and ceaselessly flowing quantum soup. What? Okay, this comes from the idea that the observer effect in physics. That is, everything at the quantum level is determined in terms of probabilities. Something may or may not be there, and you won't really know until you actually take a measurement. When you do measure, when you do observe, interact with it as a conscious entity, that the quantum probabilities collapse into actuality. So this has given rise to the idea that unless you are there, unless there's some sort of consciousness observing something, anything, that thing is only probabilities, and therefore this particular teacher says, well, if no consciousness is observing the moon, then the moon is just flowing quantum soup. That is just probabilities. It's not really there. It's only something that may be there, determined by probability percentage. So this particular teacher had a rigorous background, some education in science, but not really physics, and therefore reveals the shortcoming in understanding. There are many things that are weird and inexplicable in the quantum world, and some of those things, the observer effect, as I mentioned, the two-slit experiment I talked about last time, do seem to suggest a connection between consciousness and manifestation of the world. Now, whatever those effects are, though, generally speaking, they are at the quantum level, There are some exceptions. There are certain things that we can observe, like the two-slit experiment in physics. However, I want to reassure everyone that just because no conscious entity is watching something, that doesn't mean that this object goes from a collapsed actuality back into quantum probabilities. That's not the way it works. That's not the way that the macroscopic world works. The same reasoning is that at the quantum level, most everything is empty space. So in the macroscopic world, we feel, sense, touch, take solid objects, and that's because there's a stability that is the accumulated effect from very small levels up to the very high level. There's stability at the macroscopic level, not the quantum effects that we observe. It doesn't make the quantum effects any less real. It's happening all the time, all around us, but it's a big mistake to mistake the quantum level with the macroscopic level. So I want to get that out of the way, number one. Those of you that know something about science, you appreciate how incredibly ignorant this statement is. Example number two, from a female teacher of spirituality, she says, channeling an entity who's male, she says, we have great technology from anti-gravity magnets to magnetic fields of zero-point energy. We have all that, and we still have this ugly, superstitious concept of God. So she wanted to make a point about her concept of God, which is better than the traditional concept of God, but she went into it talking about technology. We have this great technology from anti-gravity magnets. No, we don't. We do not have that as one of the technologies that we master. In fact, that doesn't even make any sense. Anti-gravity magnets, what is that? Number two, magnetic fields of zero-point energy. Again, that doesn't make any sense at all. Zero-point energy is what happens at the quantum level, that even when it's at absolute zero temperature, there's still velocity, there's still motion at the quantum level. Therefore, there's always some sort of inherent energy, zero-point energy. Zero-point energy is not a free source of energy, not an unlimited source of energy. So there's a lot of people that don't really even know what zero-point energy is, that try to make it into something that it is not. This teacher is one of them. She really doesn't know anything about science. Her understanding of science is more like Star Trek level of science. So she's making up all these terms, thinking that it makes her sound intelligent, but it only betrays her lack of knowledge. So how do you protect yourself against charlatans, con artists who would use technical terms, scientific terms, to make themselves seem more believable? Well, my number one suggestion would be that there's any number of really great popular books on science that it's always a good idea for us to better our knowledge, to increase our level of understanding by taking advantage of these resources. So Carl Sagan has a number of extremely readable books about science. Many other great scientists out there have books that explain those inexplicable concepts really well, so that we can all get an idea about quantum weirdness, about what it means and what it does not mean. Most of the new age teachers out there, I have to say, have not even a layperson's understanding of quantum mechanics, and therefore they should not be the ones to throw those terms around. They will use it wrong. They are just thinking on the fact that probably nobody else knows anything about them either among their followers, and therefore they can misuse those terms with impunity. So, and I think honesty is extremely important when you are pursuing spiritual matters, a spiritual quest. You have to make sure that everything you disseminate or hear about is based on some kind of fact, some kind of truth.
Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.